Our Thursday, July 24th, Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Do we take a roll? Is it necessary? We have a quorum. We're good. So we'd like to have an introduction of newly appointed officers, and I'd like to ask Michelle to assist with that.
Can you hear me now? Better? All right, see if this works. So good afternoon again, and I'm excited to be back here in front of you guys. So this is only, I think, my second time I've met you, so thank you for being here this afternoon. We do have a new member, a newly appointed member, and that is Mr. Dave Ferguson. He is sitting here on the right. So I'm just going to do a brief little comment. Mr. Ferguson, we're super excited to have him here. He has been here 10 years on Hilton Head Island. He has extensive experience, executive leadership, sales development, financial experience, kind of well-rounded, a lot of different levels of experience for sure. So he knows himself better than I, so I was just going to welcome him to say a few comments and say welcome and thank you for serving.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working on contributing to the committee. All great things that you've already done.
Welcome.
At this time, I'd like to have an adoption of the agenda. So I'd like to call a motion to adopt the agenda and ask
For a second. So moved. Second.
all those in favor, show by raising of a hand. All those opposed.
Adoption is approved.
I'd like to call a motion to adopt the minutes.
And ask for a second. I move to adopt the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, show them by a raise of a hand.
Mr. Farrell, can you repeat who was first and second, please?
For the
Adoption
adoption,
of the agenda.
The minutes.
the minutes was Martin.
Martin. Flash.
And Keith was the second.
Thank you.
All right. And unless anyone, the motion would be approved to
Adopt
adopt
the minutes with request.
requested corrections. Are there any suggested corrections?
No.
Okay. So new business. We are going to have an election,
Election and
chairman and vice chairman, and I would like to propose Keith as our chairman. Do we do them one at a time?
time, Michelle, or do we do them
We take a
nominations from the floor?
first.
So one at a time would be great. Chair first, then vice chair.
Okay. So Keith, we'd like to nominate you as our new chairman.
Thank you.
Being
Voluntold. I volunteered and
we take nominations from the floor? From up here.
Any other?
Any other nominations from the? So by showing of hands, all in favor of Keith being our new chairman? It's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
For our vice chair, we would like to nominate Martin Lesh as to be our vice chairman. All those in favor?
Any other
Any
nominations?
nominations from the diet?
No.
All those in favor? You abstain? Okay, so we have a new vice chair. Now, Michelle, overview of Accommodations Tax Committee role, responsibilities, statutory requirements. Curtis Coltrane.
Yes, sir. So the town attorney is going to come up and speak to you on the next few agenda items. And if you like, Mr. Schlegel can take over if you want.
I think Mr. Farrell should just continue this
You
meeting
good?
as his contribution. He does have a hand. And we'll switch seats at a later date.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Curtis Coltrane, and I'm here to give you a brief overview. Most of you have already heard this once, a new member has not. And the first subject is the role of the committee, your responsibilities, and the statutory requirements that govern your work. The Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee is a requirement of the statute that creates the accommodations tax, that being the state accommodations tax, which is a 2% tax on lodgings. The accommodations tax is actually part of a overall 7% tax, and the 2% portion is returned to the local governments in the area where the accommodations tax were raised. In areas that collect more than $50,000 in accommodations tax each year, the creation of an accommodations tax advisory committee is required. And the purpose of the committee is this. The 2% accommodations tax that is returned to the town from the state has several components. The first component is the first $25,000 goes to the general fund. The second component, wait a minute, let me pull my stuff out so I don't get my numbers wrong. Is 5%, also goes to the town, to the general fund. The third component is what is known as the 30% fund, and that is 30% of the amount, and it is delivered to the town-appointed designated marketing organization, and it is used by that organization to promote tourism through advertising and creation of publicity. The remainder, which is the 65% fund, is the province of the committee. And what the town does is it is required to distribute the 65% fund in ways that are tourism-related expenditures. The committee receives applications from applicants seeking grants of tourism-related expenditures and makes its recommendation to town council about which of those applications ought to be approved either in whole or in part. The final decision on that is made by the town council, but the committee receives the applications, examines the applications, sees the presentations from the applicants, and then makes its recommendations to town council. Those of you who have been here before have been through this process, and I think that's an accurate description of what you do. In determining the tourism-related expenditures, the statute has a series of things that are defined as tourism-related expenditures. The first is the advertising and promotion of tourism. The second is the promotion of arts and cultural events. Third is construction, maintenance, and operation of facilities for civic and cultural activities that serve tourism. The fourth is the criminal justice system, to the extent that the criminal justice system devotes its time to dealing with issues that are created by the tourist population. The fifth is public facilities, restrooms, dressing rooms, parks and parking lots for beach attendees, for park attendees, things like that. 6 is tourist shuttle transportation. 7 is control of waterfront erosion. 8 is visitor and convention centers. And a new one, 9 now, is workforce housing. But you all largely deal with the promotion of arts and cultural events and things like that for the applicants who come in, who have programs that serve the tourist population in some degree. Again, how that works and whether it fits into this is the matter that is in your discretion for making your determinations. The check on both the town council and the committee is the State Tourism Expenditure Review Committee, and it reviews allocations that are made, and it can find that this allocation, that allocation, or the other either does or does not meet the requirements of the statute. I'm unaware that any of y'all's allocations have ever been challenged. And if they haven't, so great, doing,
Council after we make our recommendation.
well, but
It's a different-
right, the Turks review follows town council's decision on the allocation. But again, if you're not getting challenged, then you are obviously doing the job in the way that it has been contemplated to be done. So that's good. But as those of you who have been here know, and those of you who have not will learn, the process is one where there are applications, there are presentations, there is debate and discussion between and amongst the members of the committee, and there is a recommendation made to town council following that. Obviously, there's a very broad range of things that might come before you that I can't sit here and describe all of them to you today, but your goal and your obligation as members of the committee is to review the applications, make a determination of which of them meet the requirements of the statute, and make your recommendation to council on that point. The statute requires that a procedure be created by the town council and by the committee, and in connection with that, the committee has adopted its bylaws. I'm guessing y'all have looked at this at some point in time, so I won't read it to you. For example, requires annual election of officers, which you have done today. It has the rules of order set out. It has your procedures for conducting your meetings and your review of the applications, and has some other things in there that really deal with how the proposals are made to you, how requests for funds are made, and then gives a process for amending the bylaws if the committee wishes to do that. Beyond that, and again, without trying to delve into specific things that might come before you, in broad general terms, that is what the committee does. That is the basis for the committee's existence, being the statute that sets up the A-tax fund and tells you what your charge is in the review of applications that are made for allocations out of the 65% fund. Are there any questions? Anything that one might think I should have covered in more depth or anything like that?
One observation, when you talk about Turk compliance, we rely on the town and they've done a great job for us. Years ago, I think it was true that you could go to Turk and get guidance in advance of making recommendations. That has now changed, so it's fully an after action by them. So we still may get some changes from them, but that's because we can no longer go to them in advance and ask.
Well, that is always a possibility. I guess the point of my question is that thus far, I mean, to my knowledge, none of the allocations that have been recommended by the committee and which have ultimately been adopted by the council have resulted in a challenge with Turk. Sure.
We're talking about the percentages of the allocations. Being that we only make recommendations, we don't actually allocate any money, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Town has a policy to set concrete percentages on how much money will go to grants, how much money will go to capital improvement projects, how much money will go to housing. Now, housing has a set percentage in the state law, right, of 15%. So the town can take up to 15%. So setting a percentage on that would not be a problem, just like the 30% for the DMO. That's all within the state law. But the other percentages would seem like rewriting state law. Would those percentages be, I mean, can the town just carry out as a policy and it's not actually a real thing? For example, the town has allocated 33% of the remaining 65% to grants.
Yes.
But there's nothing in the state law that says that they can do that 33% can be, it's never been, no one's ever done it, so it's never been adjudicated, so.
It has not been. However, what the statute does say is that.
I'm just saying that year in and year out, it would take out the process of actually giving out the grants. You know, you're kind of like, you're eliminating a certain part of the process.
You are, but 6425 does give the municipality and the committee the opportunity to adopt guidelines to fit what you need or what it believes it needs. So I think that is within council's purview to do that. For workforce housing, yes. Well, I think Mr. Lesch's question was directed to just the general setting of percentages beyond that.
Devoted towards, that's out of the original 35. though, right?
Correct.
Just make
And
sure that-
the ultimate determination of the allocation of the funds, I mean, is a political process. And so what council has adopted, depending on how council acts, is subject to change. Right? I mean,
Part of my question had to stem from last year where, the town had to take some money out of their CIP budget of the ATAX to cover some of the remaining grants, which they did. But I'm just saying, should we as council feel obligated every year to be guided by that 33% in a legal sense? I mean, I can understand in a policy sense, but.
well, I think as of the point that council has adopted, yes, that should be your guideline. But I also think that if the committee as a whole has an issue with that, that is a matter to take up with council. If you feel that should be addressed in some different way.
Thank you.
Real quick, can we just make sure everybody's mic is on? I think some of them are and some of them aren't, just to make sure. Okay, thank you.
And so the second item we have here is in fact your bylaws. And again, those of you who have been on the committee certainly have a familiarity with how your bylaws read and how they work. So I don't want to, bore everyone with that. We have a new member. And so, maybe the way to get through this in the most efficient way would be to ask Mr. Ferguson, have you had an opportunity to review the bylaws? And if so, do you have any questions about them?
I have had the opportunity, and at this time, I don't have questions.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions about the text and procedures that are set out in your bylaws? Again, y'all have worked with them now over some time, so but again, to the extent, and I probably don't need to say this, but to the extent that any of the processes that you all have followed have, presented problems for you, you do have the ability to adjust your bylaws as you see fit. Again, I don't know that there have been any issues, but to the extent that there are, you do have the ability to change them if you run into problems with them. And oftentimes, problems with written documents don't present themselves until they do. And so you have to, but it is something that you can change. All right, then with that, I will move on. The next item is the Freedom of Information Act. And again, I will know that the members who have been here are familiar with most of this. So for our new member, I'll try to step through what I think are the big points that you have to consider due to your service on a public committee. This committee is a public body under the text of the Freedom of Information Act. And what that means is that with very few exceptions, everything that you do and say in the service of the committee is a public record. In order for the committee to act as a whole, you must have a quorum. And 7, gotta have, 4 to act. Typically I think you get more than that, but that is your minimum. And your meetings all have to be noticed in accord with the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act, which means a minimum of 24-hour notice. You must post an agenda. Once the meeting has started, there are requirements for changing the agenda, specifically if the agenda is changed in any way that adds an item for action, meaning you have to have a supermajority to vote to do that. I don't think that's been an issue here, hasn't been an issue with town council during the time that I've been working with town council since the Freedom of Information Act changed to do that. But what you do have is you have your posted agenda, which you're required to follow unless you take the steps to change it during the meeting. And again, if you change it in a way that adds something on which there'll be action, it requires a supermajority. And again, don't know that that's ever happened here, but that is something that can happen. Communications between the members of the committee are where I feel the most attention is needed at this point. Again, all communications between the members of the committee that deal with committee business are a public record. Doesn't matter what the method of the communication is, doesn't matter what device the communication takes place on, if a device is involved, meaning your personal telephone is not shielded from the Freedom of Information Act. You cannot use individual communications in an effort to get around the Freedom of Information Act, meaning person one can't make a deal with person two, who then makes a deal with person three. You can't do that. All the business of the committee has to be open, in public, and subject to the public's ability to view it and see what the committee is doing. Again, I don't know that such a thing has ever been an issue here, but it's been an issue throughout the state with local governments and other people. So I do always feel the need to say, what you do is public. What you do is available to the public to be seen and reviewed by the public, and you must keep that in mind as you conduct the committee's business. The committee, again, is a quorum of 4, so anytime 4 members of the committee are together, that's a meeting. And that meeting has to be advertised and conducted in compliance with the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act. The next item here is the subject of an executive session, which the committee is allowed to do. Public bodies are allowed to go into executive session for limited numbers of items, one of which is receipt of legal advice on specific questions if such a need arises. Other things deal with personnel matters, contracts that are in a state of negotiation and things like that. I don't believe this committee negotiates contracts, and y'all don't have, y'all aren't the body that deals with the appointment of personnel to the committee. So mainly for you all, to the extent that there is ever a legal question that you need advice on, that is something that you can go into executive session for, and that matter is exempt from the disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. You have to notice your executive session on your agenda, and you have to, in terms that are sufficient to allow a reader to know what it is you're going to be talking about, state what you're going to be talking about. Obviously you don't go into what anybody's going to say, but you have to state the subject so people know what it is. If there is a chance, and there could be here, where following an executive session, some action might be taken, you also have to notice that on your agenda. Again, I don't know how frequently that comes up with this committee, but that is something that you are required to respond to, excuse me, just like everyone else. So the main points here is committee is 4, excuse me, quorum is 4, and anytime 4 of you together, that's a meeting, and it has to comply with the Freedom of Information Act. All communications between and amongst the members of the committee are on the public's business, are public, and are reviewable and disclosable to the public. The only exception to that would be situations where the committee goes into executive session in a properly noticed and published meeting agenda. And for the committee, I think those are really the big points that you might run across in your service on the committee. And if anyone has any questions, of course, I'd be happy to address them now.
I have a question about ethics. It's a
Okay.
personal question. As you might know, I'm a freelance musician, right? And so when I was selected to be on the ATAX committee, I dropped off any ATAX or any ATAX receiving nonprofits I was on a board of. And I've never accepted any like free tickets or gifts from any organization since I got on the committee. But occasionally throughout the year, and I'll never know this in advance because, you know, being a freelance musician, my booking is sporadic. For example, in the last year, after ATAX consideration was done, in the fall, I was, for example, hired by the symphony to play a children's concert. Do I have to recuse myself from any votes on the symphony? I had no outstanding contract beforehand, and it was a last minute thing to replace another musician.
Well, wait, so did the engagement take place after you'd acted on the?
Yeah. I never have had any outstanding contracts at the time of,
I mean, is the question, do you have to go back in time and recuse
no,
yourself?
would I have to this year recuse myself? I have no outstanding contracts with any organization, but last year I did play for that organization.
The decision to recuse is one that the individual has to make based on your own knowledge of your situation. If you, you know, the question usually comes down to is, do you stand to gain personally from the result of the decision that you might make? I mean, if you ask me, I would say that unless you have.
We're talking about a fraction of 1% of my income,
Well,
maybe.
but I mean, you know, again, it's a decision for each member, but unless you have some real reason to believe that following whatever action might be taken, something's coming, the fact that you've done something with an organization in the past doesn't strike me as a sufficient reason to step back. Now, again, you have to make that decision on your own, and you can certainly, you know, disclose to everyone that that has happened. But I mean, you know.
Let me ask you this, what about, I also, at the time I got on ATAX, I get offered free tickets to shows, and I always say no, and I'll pay to go to the show. Would accepting free tickets be a reason to recuse yourself? Like, say, for example, I'm wondering, not just at the committee level, but if you're on town council, you're actually allocating money and you're accepting gifts from groups that you're allocating money to, do you have to recuse yourself or no? It's still just a personal decision?
Well, to a large extent, yeah, the decision to recuse is a personal one that each individual has to make based on your own situation. Again, I'm not getting particularly prickly over the fact that someone may have had a relationship, you know, an engagement in the past. I mean, you don't have anything pending now, nor do you have an application pending now, for that matter, I don't think. So I mean, you just have to look at it and see. I mean, you know, I'd hate to, you know, try to get too far and say, well, yeah, this is a problem, that's not a problem, other than to say if you are an individual that has decision-making authority over a grant, and you have some relationship, irrespective of how you wish to describe it, with an applicant, then you need to think about that. But again, without knowing exactly what the situation is, it's kind of hard to say this, that, or the other thing does or does not apply.
Martin, and just from my perspective as one committee member, we have mandates that certain members of the committee come from hospitality, lodging, and other areas. They're obviously going to have relationships with people in those communities, and that's just part of the strength of the committee. So to Mr. Coltrane's comments, as long as it's not in any way influencing or substantial, to me, I would suggest each of us disclose that at the meeting, that there is some relationship or other. And I know that John has been involved as a board member of several organizations and recused himself. So if becoming a member of one of those boards again is important to you, you can do the same that John has done and just recuse. But if it's something insubstantial like one engagement from the symphony or something like that, A, it's what you do, and B, that's part of why you're on this committee. My take, not legal advice, just.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. I mean,
I just want clarity on it.
I mean, if you're, well, again, I don't know if there's any reason to start making up situations that don't exist, so. But, I mean, to the extent to the exact point of your question, the last year, the recommendation was made before this happened, and then this year, there's no pending engagement, and you don't have an application yet, so. I mean, if you wish to, you can certainly, at the time that you review that, remind the members of the committee that you have in the past been engaged by the symphony to perform a show for the children's concert, and see if anybody has.
Yeah, and I believe that all our recommendations were unanimous the last
Yeah.
2 years, so.
But I mean, again, that's,
I think, Mr. Coltrane, would it be a
Recommendation, a legal,
legal recommendation that if it could have the appearance of being inappropriate or
conflict of interest,
then you err on the
out
side
of caution, almost protecting the integrity of the board?
well, I think that is, the way it goes, but I mean, and again, everyone kind of has to decide for themselves. Again, I mean, as far as I mean, based on the facts as laid out for this one, I don't see an issue there.
Can I give you another one?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Let's do another one. I own a vacation rental company, and we, as part of our services, we promote a lot of these events to the customers who are coming in to rent through us. Some of the organizations that we work with will give us tickets to come to an opening show, for instance, so that we can, as a staff, come in and see the production and then promote it, help them promote the function. And that's been a long, ongoing thing. It's with the Art Center. It's established. I think it does well for them, and it's great for us. Is that a conflict of interest? Would I be allowed to accept those tickets and let my staff go if I didn't go?
Well, let me ask this question. Because, and I'm not trying to evade, but I think this is relevant to how a committee member has to examine it. I mean, how much heartburn does that cause you?
No, I love it.
Well, I mean, well, no, I mean, but if you don't, but if, I mean, so if you don't sense that it is an issue with your service, knowing what you are required to do, knowing what your job is, then, you know, I mean, as you describe it, it sounds like a kind of, I'm sorry, sort of a de minimis thing, right? It's not, do you sense that such a thing affects the way you view things?
No.
Okay. Well,
But someone else might. You know,
well,
there might be
someone
that-
else,
that might-
someone else might, but depending on the motivations of someone else, there might be an overly restrictive or frankly overly non-restrictive view of a particular activity. And I think that is why, I mean, mainly under the Ethics Act, it is left in the first instance to the individual about, you know, who has to make the decision. Again, I mean, I'm not sure how frequent this is or what the magnitude of it is, but again, I think that what I would recommend would be, to the extent that such things happen, you make a disclosure. I mean, if you don't think if it doesn't to you qualify as something that will affect in some way your service on the committee or your view of a particular application, you disclose it and move on. I mean, obviously, this is not a new thing or something that is coming, but something that has been going on, right? Okay. So, to date, anyway, has not manifested itself as a problem.
Not yet,
But
no.
the open-ended,
A little uncomfortable with the open-endedness of that. At the end of the day, if it's not the town attorney, who would make that determination as to whether or not it's a perceived or otherwise conflict of interest?
Well, ultimately, it's the State Ethics Commission.
Which is, I'm looking further down the road than it's
Right.
apt to get, but crazier things have happened, so.
Well, I mean, again, you do have to, and again, depending on what the situation is, and what all the facts that might be wrapped up in it are, you know, the answers will be different. But, you know, Mr. Schlegel's point is well taken, which is that you're here because you're in this community of folks. And there is going to be interaction, most likely, between some or all of you and many of the people who come before you. I mean, that's why you're here, because you have some knowledge of what they do, how that might fit in with the requirements of the statute with respect to tourism-related expenditures. I mean, I would say that anytime there's anything that causes any member I hate to say to think about it, but almost to think about it, if you have to think about it, you may already know the answer.
That we just make recommendations and town council actually allocates money, is there a difference between that? As far as sense of propriety, I mean, I guess that the ultimate decision's up to the state ethics.
I mean, you know, the answer is sort of, but I mean, in reality, I think not. I mean, I think that the service on the committee, even though it is a recommending board as opposed to a final decision board, is important and carries a lot of weight.
So the same standards for both?
Yes.
Okay.
I swore to myself I wasn't gonna ask questions today, but I'm kind of known as a guy who does ask questions. One of my nicknames is FAQ. So, now this brings up something in my own mind I wanna ask, from an ethical standpoint. So if I am, part of the committee that, recommends a grant for an organization, and let's say at the end of the year, and then early in next year, they reach out to me and wanna form a consulting agreement with me, am I ethically bound to do anything with that conversation before I agree to do business with that organization?
Well, so the organization reaches out and says they would like to engage
Consult
you
them.
as a consultant.
Or speak at their event, or, you know, a paid engagement of some sort? Am I ethically bound to do anything at that point before I agree to it?
Not before you agree to it, but after you agree to it, you are.
And so,
next year.
You know, for
So I
the,
would recuse myself the following year?
yes,
Okay.
going forward. I mean, again, if this happens after you've completed your work for year one and they come to you in year two, fine. But from year two and thereafter, as long as you're engaged with them, you would have an
Okay,
issue there.
great, thank you.
But what if, I mean, I think he's also not, say he's not doing a full-on consulting contract with them. Say he is doing a one-off speech or a one-off engagement with them, and he had no prior knowledge that this was gonna happen, and he has no knowledge it's gonna happen the year after that. He's supposed to recuse himself the following year?
Well,
I'm just saying that's the nature of the
it's,
freelance.
Or just do it for free.
I mean, in a way, well,
or you can do it for
it's
free.
like your performance. I think at that point, you disclose and see what, see if anyone else has an issue with it. And then again, you have to make up your own mind about whether it affects your ability to fairly make a recommendation on this, that, or the other organization's application.
We benefit personally, and whether or not it will influence our.
Well, under the Ethics Act, it's benefit personally. What the parsing I'm doing here is that, for example, your ticket to a performance. I mean, I'm guessing that for everyone on this committee, that's not a, material thing in their life, right? You didn't have to pay for a ticket. So that's there. It seems like, again, as we discussed, maybe a de minimis sort of thing. You have to decide in your own mind if the fact that you've done this, number one, will create an issue, and whether you should act on the application of someone who has done that. I mean, again, you have to, a lot of it depends on your own internal radar. And, I will tell you that, mine is what I said. If I have to think about it, then I know the answer.
I think back to my question to you is, so we can volunteer, obviously, or give our services, time, talent, and treasure to a nonprofit. I do that all the time. But once we begin to profit, what do we have to, other than looking at ourselves and saying, hey, how do I feel about this personally? But being on the committee, what are we bound to do? And under the ethics rules, where does that fall? If we're profiting from our relationship versus if we're donating our services?
Well, donating, obviously, there's no financial component to that could be counted as profiting. So that's one thing. When you are getting paid, that's a different question. And again, becomes to, you have to, number one, I think that has to be disclosed. Number two, you have to make your own resolution in your own mind about what that really means and whether that is sufficient for you to recuse yourself.
So then back to my other question, that when do we disclose that? Before we make the agreement with them or after we make the agreement with them?
Well, if you're talking to someone who has an application that might come before you, I think I would tell them, this might mean I can't deal with your application as a member of the committee. If you make the deal anyway, which I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing, but if you make the contract anyway, then you have to, on the flip side, make a determination about whether you will recuse yourself from consideration of that committee, of that application.
Children, can you get the ethics language into the shared drive so people can read it for ourselves? It's clear that the language is written in such a way that the burden is always put back on the individual to use your conscience. And I think we all agree that at minimum, we're going to disclose, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yes, I can do that. But, it is something that requires, actual thought and consideration when you're confronted with that situation. Some things, and again, your, you know, wherever it is you might be perched might have an impact on how you view a particular set of facts.
Well, there's a materiality issue. Materiality can be viewed different ways by different people, and as John says, we want to be sure that there's no question in anyone's minds that we may be doing something improper. But I would argue, as I did initially, without the relationships that many of us have in the community, we can't support these organizations, which is really somewhat the role of the ATAX committee. So as long as we disclose, we can talk about the materiality if a member of the committee needs to,
Yeah.
or if they can reach out to you.
Okay,
But it might be helpful to just read the language.
all right, I can do
again.
that.
Sorry to lead you down this whole abyss. Thank you.
Well, no, it's an important discussion. I mean, you know, it is something that people in public service are confronted with and, you know, ought to think about. So it's not a, you know, it is something that is worthy of consideration and discussion really at any time that such an issue comes up.
So to summarize, sorry,
If someone feels they have a conflict of interest,
they make that disclosure to the chairman, you make a determination whether or not he should recuse himself from any discussion on the consideration of a grant application.
Well, the individual should make that decision themselves, but, and I'm making this up, but if someone makes a disclosure that everyone else on the committee is horrified by, then yes, y'all could make a motion and deal with it. Again, not suggesting that's gonna happen, but, I mean, but,
compensated or otherwise, because what I
I still am of the opinion that if it's possible that it could be misunderstood as a conflict of interest, we should protect the integrity of the board with a
well, again, don't disagree with that, you know, back to my point, if you have to think about it, right. Right. Anything else? All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
I think I'm gonna try this mic. Can you guys hear me on this mic really well? It's easier than this one. So up next, thank you guys, all those were great questions, and it was nice to see the discussion. So thank you for all those great questions. And we learn just as much as you do every time we hear the information. So the next item, definitely, as you've already kind of referred to, is the town's comprehensive South Carolina Accommodations Tax Program, which includes the application process and the fund distribution policy. This is a lengthier staff report, so I was going to ask what the board would prefer. I can go through this page by page. We can break it up into sections and ask questions for where it seems appropriate. Or if you guys feel comfortable and you've read through everything and you just want to ask questions, it's really the pleasure of the board, what you prefer.
I think if Dave has any sort of procedural questions, otherwise we all are pretty familiar with it.
Okay. So, yeah, it was part of the agenda packet, but I can provide it to you. Sure. I think I have an extra copy, but it's,
I can grab one. There's one by the seat.
yeah, it's rather lengthy, but yeah, there you go. Thank you. It's an extra, yeah. So it goes through the entire distribution, the whole policy, which includes the state law, the town policy, the committees, the state committee, the TURC committee, which is the review committee. It goes over both the state and the town aspects of the program. It reviews all of that, in addition to establishing the new fund distribution policy, which is what has been referred to. So the state does determine certain percentages. The first three parts of the ATAX money goes to certain funds. The first 25,000, 5%, and 30% to the DMO, and then the remaining 65% is for the town to determine how they would like to distribute those funds. So that fund distribution policy was established to to put those certain percentages in place to help us as we go through the process. As with anything, like any ordinance, any policy, any procedure, you know, there are always learning curves and things that we may figure out, does this work really well? Does it not really work well? And we can always go back and review those and make recommendations if we would like to see changes, if that would help.
Well, I'll look at it, and who would I direct questions to at that point, outside of this meeting?
We'll be happy to take those questions as staff. You can let me know. And then if there's something I can't answer or I'm not sure of, I will refer to the appropriate staff and get those answers for you. Yes, sir.
Generally, I was gonna ask Curtis this, but maybe you're the better person to ask this. So generally, obviously, we spend, it sounds like, and from what I've read, we spend most of our time on the 33%, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have any other input into the other percentages as a committee? No? Okay.
Not particularly, but you would have in general overall in the fund distribution policy as the committee, as the ATAC committee, if there are thoughts and concerns that you have as you see these policies and procedures put in place, as you process the ATAX applications, then you can discuss that as a committee and make recommendations to go forward to, it would go to the FNA, the Finance Administrative Committee first, and then they would make recommendations and go to town council. Unless, is that, I'm looking over at Mayor Pro Tem Brown to make sure that's correct.
Dave, if I can just interrupt you for 1 second. For example, last year, we were unsure of the final number of ATAX dollars that were available. And so we decided to, we submitted two possibilities, one to fully fund everybody and one that was a cut in some funding. And then we left it up to town council and the finance administration committees to handle, to make the choices. I mean, they're really allocating the money anyways. So we went with the full funding, and they were able to pull some money out of the CIP budget to fund that. So that's where that other percentage might come in on rare occasions. I think the town is trying to, one of the efforts of the 33% is to try and tighten that up a little bit, and so that we kind of know where we should be and they know what they're gonna do. So we kind of have more of a guideline of where we're going with it.
But we really will have no role outside of the 33%, including the new 5% piece or
Outside of
the
just looking at the
DMO piece
policy.
or the 30%, right? We really don't have any conversation or input into it.
Not particularly in that, but you would still have, you know, a voice if you had concerns about the percentages, you know, about the policy in general, which would include all those levels of percentages, whether it was the 30% or 33% for the ATAX or the certain percentage, 7% for CIP or whatever that might be. You as a committee can, you know, hey, we've been through a year with this and we're not sure that the percentages seem to work, and you can make recommendations to FNA and then in turn go to town council. So you would still definitely have a part of the process for sure. Yes, sir? And we welcome any feedback. Everything is a learning curve, right? There's always room for improvement.
Changes in town's policies or practices highlight?
Really, the process in the ATAX program is pretty much the same. What we were trying to do was help put in that distribution policy for some consistency and to help you in your process as you're looking through the applications and how much money is available. Sometimes there's been question when you actually come to the time that you're making those decisions, sometimes we do not have the exact funding allocation at that time. So we felt like it was a good way to help you and help the applicants themselves too. So pretty much the policy, the program is still the same. It's just putting that distribution policy in place to help and some other information, evaluation to help you.
The application a state application, or is it, do we create our own application?
So the town has its own application, but it's all based on state law. So the requirements are state law.
And is there any, being that the whole policy has been in review, is there any idea to review the application itself?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Is there any, since the whole policy has been in review with distribution, is there any review to change the application itself or the guidelines of what we should consider in an application?
So everything was considered when we looked at the fund distribution policy, and really, like I said, the program is pretty much the same. It was the funding distribution that we were looking for, but all the same requirements, their budgets, their profit and loss, all that is exactly the same.
Yeah.
Correct. And we did listen to the committee, and make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. You guys had requested mandatory attendance at the applicant training workshops, and to have those, maybe a little bit more helpful and geared towards the applicant themselves. And we listened to that and established 2 new workshops, one during the daytime, one during the evening, to help accommodate the different schedules. So that did change, that particular item. And we hope that's a better change. Definitely listen to the committee and the needs of the
That
applicant.
for all applicants or just new applicants?
All applicants, anyone who's interested in applying for the 2026 ATAX.
Have to have a representative.
Correct. Yeah, so we know that everybody, it's summertime, people are busy and their families are on vacation, but they can send a representative for them.
Are there any exceptions to that? Wondering if, and somebody, is there?
That will be up to, as the committee, you're the same because you mandated that this, it's a mandatory workshop. So that will be part of your review
I
process.
think the sense of the committee last year was that it be mandatory for new and recommended for existing. Maybe to pick up on Martin's point, if something happens, people get in emergency situations or whatever, we want to make certain that a worthy organization will still apply, even if they didn't get to the training.
Okay.
Yeah, I think our concerns stem from some new applications we received in the year prior that just didn't fit ATAX guidelines at all, so at least for Hilton Head. And so we just wanted to make sure that new applicants were being, were going to the workshop and getting it figured out.
And we found even with, for example, even some existing applicants, over time, there's been different interpretations, as with any ordinance or any policy. So even as a routine applicant, someone who comes back every year, they can be very helpful because sometimes there's, a change in the interpretation, or maybe they didn't quite fully understand it from years past. So it's, we're hoping that this really helps more, gives them more clear consistency, some more direction, and understanding exactly what we're looking for to help them.
Value of returning applicants is that they can help
Correct.
answer questions for new applicants and maybe even provide a mentor relationship for some of them. So I think it's a great idea to make it mandatory so we get both parties there. I just want to be sure that from my perspective, we've always said, think you qualify, then apply, and we'll deal with it at the committee level. We don't want people discouraged from applying.
Okay. And it is a great way to network.
Application, though, is a little more, state regulated, right?
It is state regulated, so it's based on the state requirements.
Modifications to it. Better,
Which we felt helped us help them, was the
Sure.
tagline we used, Mr. Chairman, if you recall, and I think and it was one of the great joys of my time here was that we did listen to our constituents, so to speak, and we made modifications that made the process more effective and clearer, cut out meaningless things, and I think we got better at this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's what we're hoping from the workshop, is that, this isn't just it's for all of us to learn from each other, whether it's staff or the applicant or a committee member. It's for all of us to learn and find out what really does work best for our community.
So if we wanted to make a change, which we heard about the ROI, the cost per. So if you take the number of heads and beds that you estimate through whatever data collection methods you use, and based on what the grant number is, you can do a calculation to get an ROI, which there's people who have finance backgrounds, like our new chairman, and others. That data, if applicants are told in advance, we would like to see that calculation made. I think we should have our application reflect that ask. How do we get that, Doctor?
So your current application is already in place for 2026, so you would be looking at your 2027. And that's a process you can do, like, if you want to go ahead and get through your 26 approvals, and then you can have a meeting where that's an agenda item in particular that you've requested, you want to look at that, and, we can make adjustments as the committee would like to make recommendations, and then we can take it to the FNA, go through the proper channels. Be great.
One way to address that, John, is that I'm gonna attend at least I'm gonna try to do both. I'm gonna do one of the workshops, and together with the town folks, help explain to them the things that we do look at and the things that are kind of critical to us. Get the best information out of them we possibly can. Some people have felt they can't really produce much and they kind of skip it, which hurts them. So maybe in the workshops, we can make that a comment section.
Absolutely. We definitely want to help them. We see this as an educational tool and an opportunity, not just for the town's grant, but we know a lot of these organizations, just like we, as the town, we go out and apply for other grants. So it's a way for us to even help them develop the skills for other grants outside of the town. And we'd love to be able to do that as an added bonus to this program, for sure.
Would you like to ask the town staff if there's anyone signed up to make public comment?
Michelle, has anyone signed up to make a public comment?
When I last checked, there wasn't, but I don't think anybody, has anybody signed up for public comment? No, that I'm aware of. Before I leave, I wanted to say a great big thank you to Shanna, and I hope I have, I didn't want to not, say anything. Shanna, I'm just now starting to help with this. Shanna has done such an amazing job and has put so much work into this. I've just reaped the benefit of helping a little bit along the way. But I would totally be lost without her. And if I have said anything incorrect, I hope that she will ever call me out on it. But I just wanted to thank her.
Thank you. Michelle, you've been a great help too. And Michelle actually comes from another side of this, where she has been the applicant. So I've learned a lot from her. Most of this that we worked on together, and it comes from the sense of wanting to make sure that our applicants are helped as much as possible, and that we give you the tools to help them get there. And a lot of it has been in place, and we just kind of need to revisit for a little bit more transparency. The application still is going to work the same as it has in the past. Typically, it's that April meeting where there'll be kind of an opportunity for people to put their feedback on the previous application. If they want to do some edits, or, hey, maybe this question needs to be reworded. As long as we're giving Renee, who's our basically web director, and she does everything on there. As long as we give her enough time to get it ready, that ball's still going to be in your court to make those calls.
And to go to your question, back to your question, I thought about how interactive this committee is for the other percentages. As with any community member, attending town council meetings or other finance administrative meetings are always, definitely really great to do, because just for an example, some of the money from ATAX for projects that has benefited from the ATAX has been like Mitchellville Freedom Park, which is wonderful. The William Hilton Parkway Pathway at Wexford, that's going to be a new project. Facility maintenance needs, whether it's town hall or another town-owned property. So attending those other meetings where ATAX dollars are used to help those projects, you always have that benefit and that opportunity to be, participate and have public comment and feedback with that too. So that's another avenue not to always forget. So, yeah. So, yes, sir. And thank you guys for all that you do sitting up here. It's not an easy task, because all these organizations are great, and the services that they provide our community are outstanding. And we're excited to see what they bring forward this coming year. And it's been a joy working with them and getting to know them. As a new Hilton Head citizen here, it's been a great way to learn about who these organizations are, what you have here in the community and what they do. It is a wonderful way to do that. So thank you for that opportunity too. Thank you, guys.
For a second? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Boom.
Yeah.